The technology we will talk about today has impacted the political environment in a substantive way. Who knows what further opportunities these technological advances will produce? There may well be applications for civilian use in the transportation and logistics sector. That's why we as DHL are interested to learn more about Richard Whittle's research. Equally important, however, is the fact that Richard and I have been close personal friends for a little more than 30 years. We have worked together on a number of projects over these many years, and I'm delighted, and it's a real privilege indeed for me that I can welcome our author Richard Whittle and you interested in his work product, his most recent book on the development of drones. Richard Whittle is a global fellow at the Wilson Center and a research associate at the National Air and Space Museum, where he finished writing this book as a Verville Fellow during the academic year 13-14. Most of you know that Richard has written about the military for more than 30 years, including 22 as a Pentagon correspondent for the Dallas Morning News. This book, which came out just 2 weeks ago or so, has accumulated quite some accolades from very different and very authoritative writers and media outlets. Amazon selected the book as one of the best 50 in history books recently. The Kirkus Review gave it a coveted Start review reserved for books of exceptional merit. The Wall Street Journal called the book Predator fascinating. The Washington Post said that Richard's reporting in Predator is methodical and credible, no small feat given the lid of silence that the Air Force, the CIA, the Obama administration, and General Atomics have welded onto their drone operations, even the trivial parts. The Post Review added that Whittle's best material appears in the final chapters when he delivers action-packed details about how the CIA and the Pentagon used armed predators to hunt for al-Qaeda leaders immediately after 9/11, based on interviews with numerous participants. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in for a special treat. And Richard, welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Wolfgang, for that very nice introduction. And I think we also need to point out, besides the fact that it's coincidence that DHL started this parcel copter operation, that, and my book is about the Predator, that your parcel copter is not armed, so far as I know, right? Anyway, I'm very grateful to you, Wolfgang, for your hospitality today and for your friendship. And thank you all for coming to hear about my new book, Predator: The Secret Origins of the Drone Revolution. It's an honor to speak to such a distinguished audience as this, especially when we have two former Air Force leaders with us today, former Secretary Whit Peters and retired Lieutenant General Jack Rives, who was the Judge Advocate General of the Air Force. I'm honored that you're here today. I'm also honored that retired General Jack Daly is here, for in addition to being a former Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps and a former Deputy Administrator of NASA. General Daly is Director of the National Air and Space Museum, where I've been enjoying his hospitality, so to speak, since the fall of 2013, first as a research fellow and now as a research associate. Thank you for being here, General. I appreciate it. But let me add that neither the Air and Space Museum nor General Daly bear any responsibility whatsoever for anything in my book or anything that I'm going to say today. They are innocent. It's also an honor to talk about drones at an event hosted by DHL, which, as Wolfgang has just explained, is now doing what others have been talking about. And I hope that in addition to delivering medicine, that maybe someday you'll start delivering books. My book tells what I thought was going to be the story of an extraordinary airplane, but turned out to be a story of invention, a story of war, a story about the Air Force, and a story about the CIA, and I believe the story of how a new age in aviation began. 5 years ago, I set out to write a book about that new age in aviation, and at first, I thought I would take a comprehensive look at unmanned aerial systems, or unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, as many experts like to call them. But then I read an article in Air and Space Smithsonian Magazine describing 10 aircraft that changed the world. One of the 10, and the only UAV, was the Predator. And that brought things into focus for me. The Predator was the UAV that changed the world. And as I thought about what that meant, it seemed to me more and more evident that the Predator not only changed the world of warfare, but opened the door to today's unmanned civilian aviation revolution. And that was a story I immediately knew I wanted to write, the story of the Predator and the origins of the drone revolution. And as I found out in the 5 years writing this book took me, the story of this little drone that changed the world is as strange as the aircraft itself. And many of those who created this revolutionary technology were just as unorthodox as the Predator. Take the Predator's inventor, Abraham Karam, a former Israeli aeronautical engineer many people regard as a genius. Abe Karam was born in Baghdad in 1937, but he grew up amid the socialist idealism that characterized Israel in the late 1940s and early 1950s. By his early 30s, Karam was director of preliminary design and special projects at Israel Aircraft Industries, the country's most important aerospace manufacturer. But Abe grew frustrated by the corporate climate and cynicism he saw at IAI in the early 1970s, and after working on a drone decoy to fool Arab air defenses in 1973, he was inspired to strike out on his own and develop UAVs. Karam immigrated to the United States, the land of opportunity, and like all great American inventors, he went to work in his garage. His was in Los Angeles. Now, as a young man in Israel, Abe had been a free flight modeling champion, and the sports principles stuck with him. In free flight competitions, the goal is to make a model airplane that can be launched by hand or towed into the air on a rope like a kite, and then soar as long as possible within a time limit without any remote or automated controls to help keep it in the air. Abe Karam knew all the tricks to making a plane that can soar well, and in his Los Angeles garage, he built a UAV technology demonstrator that was truly innovative. Karam called it the Albatross, naming it after one of nature's greatest soaring birds. His Albatross offered phenomenal flight endurance, up to 48 hours without refueling, which was far longer than any military UAV ever flown up to that time. Based on his Albatross demonstrator, Karam got a contract from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, to develop a larger UAV in a similar configuration for the armed services. DARPA named that little drone the Amber. And in 1989, a senior DARPA official wrote in a magazine article that the Amber provided an order of magnitude increase in the flight times recorded by previous UAVs, and that it had led the Joint Chiefs of Staff to establish a new endurance category in an unmanned aircraft master plan ordered up by Congress. Yet largely for personal and bureaucratic reasons that I detail in the book, Karam was unable to sell his drones to the Defense Department, and the company he created to build them went bankrupt in 1990. But thanks to some other unorthodox thinkers, Abe Karam's ideas, his revolutionary ideas about UAVs,